Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. This took forever to start, and it doesn't look like that to you, but it does to us. Anyway, we have a fairly full house this evening and some interesting subjects, so I thought I would knock out the way a couple of topics and chime in, chaps, if you want to. I noticed that AeroVironment and a lot of other people are jumping in on the fire that have recently happened in California and thereabouts, and they're offering various services. So AeroVironment are offering their Quantix drones. Don't know, anyone have any thoughts on that before I move on to the next thing I was thinking about? Going once, going twice? No? Okay. And the next one, Airbus, I thought was interesting. They're opening up their shop for Zephyr in Australia. I thought that was also very interesting indeed, and I've followed this hack for a long time, and yeah, that's a cool thing. Going once, going twice for comments. Zooming in, Bruce. And then lastly, I have not got to forget Patrick's pop-up pancake malarkey on the 7th. Mustn't forget that, so I've mentioned that. So that allows me to jump straight into talking to Simon from Precision Autonomy. And the takeaway line from your website, Simon, says that you're insuring and financing IoT that moves. Now, that's quite a big starting point. So what on earth does that mean? Pay as you go, pay as you go, and pay how you go risk management. Now, you're in Australia. Pay how you go. That sounds very Australian. Pay how you go, mate.
Yeah. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. So we're obviously an insurance technology company working with QBE locally here in Australia, and we're just about to go into the USA very shortly in the start of the new year. So we're an autonomous insurance company. So starting with drones, because obviously that's the first autonomous asset, and you guys can argue that cars come home, but when you compare them to cars, there is an autonomous insurance market today. So that's really where we're going to kick off. Louis, do you just mind just quickly muting for a moment? Great. Yeah. So what's Precision Autonomy all about? Well, basically the co-founders, Mark Harvison and Leanne Zito, they both seen an opportunity to jump into the finance sector in the autonomous area. And it was actually circling around this safe adoption of autonomous vehicles. So there is a real risk to a lot of jobs out there, and that includes the finance area, but also being able to manage the risk associated with drones. So my personal background, I was an underwriter at QBE for 6 years, and I looked after all the RPAS portfolio for them. I set it up from basically day one. They did have a small portfolio before I started, but I basically underwrote it and then left about a year ago before we started with Precision Autonomy. So yeah, pay as you go. So the whole pay as you go concept is very similar to what you've seen in the market today, and that is, your Flocks and your Skywatchers and your droneinsurance.coms, and basically it's this variable contract length insurance where the operator of a drone has the ability to be able to manage their insurances more accurately, and it's a bit of a trade of data. So you use software to be able to facilitate the insurance. The key differences between what we do and what some of our competitors do is basically that you still take out an annual contract of insurance because you do still need to cover the drone while it's not being flown. So we call that ground cover. And then you use our pay per fly software, which is a flight management system, not a flight interface, a flight management system or an asset management system, to be able to facilitate the full flight cover. So you basically literally just turn on the cover and turn off the cover as you're operating your drone, and you pay by the minute. So we don't charge in blocks of hours or days or months. It's just literally in blocks of minutes. So as the minutes go up, you pay more dollars, which is great for the operator today. And it is worthwhile noting that the insurer isn't completely sold on that concept just yet, but they're coming around as we start to see more minutes come on board.
What does that mean, the insurer? I don't understand. What do you mean the insurer isn't quite on board?
Yeah, so the thing about this moving from a traditional policy to a pay-as-you-go concept is it does put a lot of the contract in the operator's hands. So obviously there's an insurance contract in place, And so the operator has greater control over what premium they pay over the course of a period of insurance. So if you're taking out an annual policy and you are paying by the minute, you literally are controlling how much premium you're giving to the insurance company. Now, the insurance company, they much prefer to get the premium up front because then they have their premium in the bank. And then, of course, halfway through the contract, you guys may just shut the business down and cancel the contract, and you would get the premium back. But at least the insurance company has the premium in the bank already. So these are part of the, and I'm sure in all your businesses, you've had to grow through and innovate through these problems. But these are the types of problems that we have to encounter. So we work quite closely with a number of insured operators that are using our system today, just to figure out what that happy medium is. And it might be price sensitivity, or it literally could be the ability to do variable contract lengths, where we can, rather than doing just strictly annual contracts, we can move to a multi-year contract or even a day-by-day contract. So that's what we're looking into at the moment. So then it's a bit more of a fairer deal between the insurance company and the operator.
Fairer deal? Does that term ever apply to insurers? That can't be right. But immediately I'm thinking, so Australia, you've got a heads up on the rest of us, a head start, many years of RPAS operation. So you've seen perhaps early more cowboy times within the industry, and perhaps growing up, becoming a lot more professional over there. What do you so you've probably got, what I'm trying to say is you've probably got a very good handle on how things work in Australia. How do you see it going for you in America? It's surely a very different picture, or is it the same? Am I just overcomplicating things?
Yeah, so from a risk analysis perspective, it actually is very similar. Yes, the regulatory environment's different, and that does throw a small spanner in the works from a risk calculation point of view. But if you just peel back all the regulation layers, the actual physical operational risk and technical risk is almost identical. Particularly in Western countries that are quite mature in their experience in that environment, and the USA, they're a good example where the regulator has probably been a little bit behind where Australia's been at for a number of years, but because of the military and the military's use of drones, they do have a lot of experience in the market and in terms of operational experience. So you can sort of have a bit of comfort that the USA market is quite mature in their ability to operate drones. It's just the regulator's ability to handle them on a scaled version, and they're experiencing problems that are far greater than what Australia's experiencing. And even though Australia is growing really rapidly and continues to grow rapidly, the US's scale is just phenomenal, really, compared to what we're seeing in Australia. Having said that, coming back to basically what you're asking is that the operational risk and the technical risk is almost identical.
And so all of the insurance products in fact, I wish you guys would start coming to South Africa, and not because I'm willing.
We'd love to come to South Africa.
It's just people are being stitched up here already for their insurance products. There's no discounted sort of, as it were, or seemingly cheaper products out there. So what I'm thinking then is, is this market super sensitive to the price of insurance? Does this market not really want to have to bother to insure its stuff? Why are you making such big deals that car insurers don't make, and that sort of thing? Yeah, so
it's a net new product. So for an insurance company, it's a net new product. So there's a real opportunity to innovate on a very old industry. And this is coming back to what we do at the very start, is we do autonomous insurance. So drones being a net new product for an insurance company allows you to create a new normal. And so this pay-as-you-go concept, pay-how-you-go concept, is really going to be only half the industry, or maybe even a little bit more than half. There is still going to be this traditional insurance requirement. And so what we were finding, particularly when I was an underwriter, is you're trying to fit a UAV risk into an aviation pool of business. And the key differences are you've got, in an aviation portfolio, very, very large clients paying a lot of premium, and there's not a lot of policies. And under a drone insurance network, you have a lot of policies with a very small premium. And so the differences between underwriting and managing those portfolios are significantly different. And so what you'll actually find is a lot of insurance companies just simply can't do it because they don't have an aviation division. And if they are doing it, and this is where it can be a little bit scary from my perspective, they're trying to, so there's two ways they can do it. They have an aviation division, but they don't have the expertise to underwrite it. Or they're trying to sort of create these, what they call insurance endorsements, and put them onto the side of a general insurance product. And that's really, really dangerous. It basically ticks the box from the RPAS operator's perspective, because they're able to get, a certificate of insurance that they can hand to a mining company or an energy company. But when a claim occurs, the insurance company is just not going to be there to help. There's just, these endorsements just don't have any coverage afforded under them, which is the scariest thing for me.
Well, why would that be? Because I think that is what happens here. Basically, you get bolted onto what a general a normal commercial aviation policy with I don't think any sort of real thoughts to the RPAS part of it. So what might it mean if I got bolted onto a general aviation or commercial aviation insurance? What would that mean to my RPAS, or what might it mean to my RPAS business?
Okay, so that would be fine. If you're getting bolted onto an existing aviation insurance product, that's right. That's not what I was. It's an existing general insurance product. So like if you're a farmer and you've got an agriculture insurance policy, they have these endorsements which they put onto the policy, and that endorsement it's stipulated. It basically says that you're covered, but they have all these get out of jail free cards, which isn't great for me that I work in the industry, because we cop a bit of flack when people start to deny claims. But effectively, what it does do, that they'll happily pay out your $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 Inspire 1s and Phantom 4s. But when you have the big liability claim where you're crashing an Inspire 1 into a field 500 meters away, and the LiPo battery blows up and then burns down 60 hectares, they're going to be the first ones to say, all right, hold the phone, we don't have reinsurance coverage on this, so we're going to deny the claim because you were in breach of A, B, and C, and they'll find ways to say you're in breach of it, because it's only a very small endorsement. Whereas if you actually go and get an RPAS policy, you've got a full PDS which explains, this is designed for your operation. It's not for just like a little part of your business. It's like we're looking at a various number of things, and on top of that, you've got an underwriter that can actually deep dive into the operational aspects of what you're doing. A couple of you guys, I'm sure the flying drones today can appreciate this, that you can operate for a large agriculture company, and they care about the data afterwards, which is fantastic. But the operations to get that data, there's a huge amount of exposure to do that. And so to get to that point is the hardest bit. You need to be able to ask the right questions. So if I'm asking Bruce, hey, hi Bruce, how much flying have you done in the past 90 days? Like that's a critical question to figure out whether or not he's actually current. Because in aviation, currency is such an important aspect of the operational risk.
And then you're measuring that you're at, when somebody goes and flies, somebody's insured with you, they're off, they go and fly, you're then keeping an eye on. Now, are you keeping an eye on that airframe or an airframe and an operator? What are you keeping an eye on when because that's obviously how you're getting your version of experience.
So our current, we have a direct business, which is what we're talking about here, is the pay-per-fly system is a flight management system. So as the chief pilot, you would create a mission on the system and allocate a pilot, a drone, and a payload to that mission. Once you authorize the mission, it then goes on to our mobile device application. And then the pilot in the field, who, by the way, does not care about the insurance, generally speaking, he would then basically log in. He would select the drone he's flying, and you can allocate multiple drones. Take a photo of the drone before the flight, select the payload, take a photo of the payload before the flight, and then start and purchase the insurance. And once you hit start, the insurance, we have a timer which literally just starts counting up. And then they would switch over to the DJI Go app and just start flying. We do have an ability to tap into the DJI Go telemetry, but what we're finding is that we need to do risk analysis. The risk analysis around insurance is interesting, and that telemetry data you get from DJI and other flight autopilots is only one part of the whole technology risk. So we can actually build enough of the puzzle without that part to be quite accurate in our assessment of pilots in the field. And so just to boil it back to why pay as you go, and this concept of sort of trading data for a lower insurance premium or or a better way to pay your insurance is really the ability for a chief pilot to have KPIs on their pilots. So in 12 to 24 months, there will probably be a situation where, you know, Simon, who flies for Bruce, and Louis, who flies for Bruce, we may have, Simon and Louis will have different rates. So I might pay $1 per minute and Louis might pay $3 per minute. And Bruce, being a chief pilot, he might actually be able to ask questions why, and we can give feedback on why. And so he can use that internally to improve his whole business. And it puts a positive pressure on the environmental risk of the whole ecosystem. So, and that's really what we want to do. One of the things that CASA always says to me, you know, when we're at a conference and you hear them talk all the time, and other regulators have said this is, we just don't know. Like, we just don't know. We don't know what the real risk of this stuff is. We don't know if we can put them into fly around cities and put them around, you know, ports. But this is what we can help them do. We can sort of help the chief pilot be brave enough to go and talk to the regulators and say, you know, this is the data I've got from you know, albeit it's provided by my insurer, to be able to convince you to give me an authorization to go fly in a city or fly in a maritime area or fly around an oil rig and all that type of stuff.
So once Bruce has sacked me because my insurance is up at like $15 a minute and I go off and seek work elsewhere, when then Nicola employs me and I jump onto a system, does my data move with my bad news stories move with me? Oh, story of my life.
Yeah. The important thing is it's your data. Like, you know, yes, opting in to be able to use the system, you basically are trading it to be able to get an outcome, but you can always improve it. And so you can't just, and the classic example there is an SME, a single man band who's just does the chief pilot and the pilot thing. His premiums, he takes on a lot of risk. He's doing a lot of really difficult jobs. So his rate per minute is going to go up because he's doing a lot of really bad things. He in theory could just shut the business down and then just start a new one up and have a fully fresh set of data. We can't do that. We have to be able to transition his information across to the new business. And that's not to disadvantage him. It's actually the fairest system for everyone else in the portfolio. Otherwise, we get to a situation where everyone's going to be on the same rate. And really what we should be doing is rewarding the really, really good pilots. So their cost basis is going to be a lot lower and they can actually do the harder jobs. Whereas you know, this is the reality of life, is there are bad pilots out there, and those bad pilots, really, they probably shouldn't be flying drones. So at some stage, they need to be economically unviable to run a business.
How did you reach the point, though, of knowing? I mean, we all know how dreadful Louis is. That's just a point of fact. But how did you arrive at, unless, of course, Louis will have crashed multiple times, but unless he's crashed, here's all the bits. And you know, when you said earlier, they take a photo of the payload and the RPAS. Did they have to have a copy of today's newspaper next to it or something as well? I mean, you just have a store of photos, wouldn't you? Here it is.
Yeah, actually,
here's that one.
Yeah. We did have to navigate how we're going to deal with the photo stuff, but no. So when they finish the flight, they hit stop. We do a status report afterwards, either, you know, successful flight or an accident's occurred. And if an accident has occurred, the whole point of the photos is one of the things the insurance company requires, which sort of helps get the money back in the operator's hands quicker, is to have a before and after photo immediately before and after the accident. And so let's say that it was a successful flight and they hit, not a problem. It was a successful flight, submit flight. The flight gets submitted to the database. The photo is no longer on the iPad or iOS device at all. It gets moved off the device. And so we're not trying to clog up your system. And the second thing we actually had to navigate, we did this at the start of this year, was we don't want to suck onto too much of the battery, because you guys are running all sorts of systems on your mobile devices, and the battery of these things are good, but when you're running Propeller and you're running DJI Go and all sorts of other systems happening at the same time, your batteries really deplete quite quickly. And so we just wanted to be sort of a peripheral system in the background to be able to manage your insurances, and that's what it does. It doesn't use much of the battery on the mobile device either.
And then sorry, but then to come back to, so I don't crash a lot. So we haven't, and I fill lots of flights in. So then, am I just getting cheaper as time goes by, as long as I don't crash?
Yeah.
Is that what it's based on?
Yeah, theoretically, if you're not crashing and there's about over 500 different metrics we're running at the same time. But if let's say you're ticking the box on all those metrics, then yes, yeah, you're when your renewal comes up next time, you should be rewarded for a rate per minute.
I could be really ripping the ring out of the aircraft, and unless you're taking that data, you don't know, and that's not good for my employer. Or you're not tracking that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that is one piece of the pie we can do, but we don't get all that information in every flight for a number of reasons. But we have enough. So say that's 100 of those 500 metrics that we're looking at. The rest of the 400, it's pretty hard to tick every box, is what I'm trying to say. So if you're ticking every box, you're in the top 1% of the population. So you're a pretty good guy. I'd probably be calling you and saying, hey, we want to learn how to replicate you more. So, and we want to learn from you. But the reality is that not everyone ticks every box. And even myself, like I obviously use this system because I want to test myself. And like I'm a commercial pilot by trade. So I kind of think I can fly and understand how aircraft fly. But even myself, it's just not true. Like flying a drone is hard work, and when you're flying in Australia, you got it's really hot and heavy, and so when you're doing that, there's all sorts of technological risks associated with that. So so it's just the reality of life that one day you might be in the top 1%, the next day you might be really, really bad. And what we're trying to do is find out where you are roughly forever. Where do you sit with the rest of the population of pilots out there, and how do we help you be a better pilot?
So can you then also take it out a little bit, because of course we all know that Bruce and his band of cowboys, that's us lot, we really do accept all the dodgy jobs and all the worst parts of town at the wrong times of day. Bruce has us flying, breaking the law left, right, and centre. So can you track that and then give a metric against Bruce's cowboy company?
Yeah. So what we can do is we do have some metrics around operational distances and the ability to. So we don't say you're breaking the law because that's not we're not the regulator. But we can sort of indicate whether or not you're operating beyond visual line of sight with pretty clear distinction. But again, that's a part of we do need to be on board the aircraft to be able to find that information. So that's a part of it. And that type of information is really great for the insurance company because they're able to sort of put press releases and stuff out about, hey, maybe flying 1,500 meters horizontally away from you isn't such a good thing, because I doubt that you can see that.
Okay, but then as a business, would you think, oh my word, Bruce is sending his lads out and lads and ladies out all over the place? Perhaps the net result is we're not going to offer any of them insurance shortly. Yeah,
I can't. We're not going to see that. That's that's just not going to happen. The reality of life is that if you have a system and you do have a bunch of different pilots, most people are good people. So they are, you're not going to find yourself having a company where every single person in that company is just the worst pilot. And then, the conversation I'll be having with Bruce then is, hey mate, like I'm not going to tell you how to run your business, but maybe you should be thinking about what type of people you employ because you're not asking the right questions. So,
But aviation's a devil for commercial pressure, isn't it? Any aviation organisation, the chief pilot can be standing on you to be right up against the limits of everything. So younger pilots and stuff like that will succumb to that pressure. So
and this is what I was getting at before, is that one day you might be in that top 1% and then the next day you might be in the bottom 1%. You just every flight's different, and I know that from experience when I used to fly normal aircraft, is that you just never know what's going to be put in front of you. You try to plan to the best of your ability, but unfortunately things can go astray. And that is really what that's really what the pilot's all about, is to manage the variables. Otherwise, we don't need pilots, do we? We just fucking put a pilot on and let it do its thing.
Well, that's the world we're moving into, isn't it? Now, I notice also you have on your website pay per cover for insurers. What does that mean?
So pay per cover is actually an insurance portal for our insurers to jump onto. So we help manage the So basically, we're the conduit between the operator and the insurer. And a part of that is just an infrastructure. It's just a technical infrastructure that we built to be able to, so the insurer can log on and review their portfolios and stuff in our system. So there's some security and stability that we've built around that. So then we don't have any aspiring hackers to try and get into our system. That's really just there's a big obstacle associated with insurers on that. They like to internalize a lot of their infrastructure. And that's what we're trying to navigate through there. That's what that particular paper cover product's about.
Okay. Let me, Bruce. You're the chief pilot of this dodgy operation. What thoughts have you got? Are we going to be using this insurance service?
Sounds good to me. I like the idea that you effectively have a no claims bonus as you do with your vehicle insurance and so forth. If you're a really good pilot, low risk, then you're rewarded accordingly, and that also makes you more employable because your employer is rewarded accordingly. It's a great way to put some metrics into the whole thing, because at the moment it's just a real bit of a mess. Everyone claims to be the best, and everyone who's ever seen a drone on television claims to be a drone pilot. This is a great way of actually introducing some measurable, quantifying the skills and the risks and so forth. And I think it's going to probably lead to changes in regulation, because as Simon was saying, they don't know who is the what the risks really are. But this is a way of collating that data and presenting it in a irrefutable way that regulators can then use to refine their regulations to adjust them for the true risks involved. Oh, I like it. It's good.
Well, that was a surprise. Yeah. No, well, I mean, it's a necessary evil, isn't it? I used to have a manned hot air balloon operation down here, and I had more insurance than anybody else. But unfortunately, you can't use that as a selling point. You can't say I spent more money on insurance than anyone else. But I just took the view that if I heaven forbid something happened and I took somebody's family out, I better make sure that I had covered that family. It's but you can't sell it. It's not something you can. So it's similarly for an RPAS operator can't say we got more insurance than anyone else.
You can't just include free funeral cover with the balloon flight.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have done, shouldn't I?
Insurance is a really interesting beast, because it is a necessary evil, but a lot of people don't use it. They treat it like car and house insurance, where you just ring up and you get your coverage and move on. But these insurers, a lot of them are very educated in exactly what they're doing. And all my good customers that I used to have at QBE, and all my good customers have got really now, and I mean like the absolute best of the best here, they call me on a regular basis and they'd say to me, hey, what's your thoughts on doing this? Because they're not scared if they can back themselves into pilot. They're not scared to present something to the insurance company and say, this is what we're thinking we want to do. What's your perspective on it? And it's a open and honest, frank discussion about things.
And if you're able to, without naming names, what's the biggest claim you've paid out so far? And what was it for?
So I can't tell you what the price was, but I can tell you that we have had a couple of liability claims in the past, and those liability claims were primarily around batteries blowing up. So, you can use the example. The common one I always had was, I operate in a rural area. There's no risk. I can tell you that the risk of liability is significantly higher today in a rural area than it is in a built-up area with concrete. Yes, the chances of you killing someone is lower, but the chances of you causing property damage is significantly higher.
So are you saying that fires are some of your bigger claims?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We had a really nice one, which we had a drone crash into a power line, and I really like this story, because the actual operator of the drone calls me and says, Simon, I've crashed into a power line. What do I do? And I'm like, what's happening right now? And he goes, there's sparks flying. And I'm like, have you called 000? Have you called the fire brigade? I'm like, no. And I'm like, well, get off the phone and call the fire brigade. Like, don't call me. And so that resulted in what we call a consequential loss claim, where the supermarket down the road had all their cold produce got destroyed. So they were able to claim against our operator, and that was in the tens of thousands. So.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, well, that was funny enough. That was something that used to happen a lot in the ballooning world. Not to me, thankfully, but yes, taking out power lines and then taking out small towns, and then the resulting people lining up for their cash after that. Yeah. Okay. Well, and in light of the Matrice series batteries issue that DJI have had, that's pretty jolly interesting, and I don't think that's been properly solved yet. So, well, please stay with us and chip in, and if we think of anything more. I'm surprised we didn't have a pop at you. That's terrible. I thought we really were going to have a dig at you then. No, it does. It sounds great. And what sort of costs? I've got a couple of Matrices and an Inspire. What sort of money is it going to cost me?
Yep. So look, what we're seeing at the moment is the ground risk coverage is like roughly 2.5% of the agreed value. And then you pay a little bit of premium on that for what we call general liability. So, if you've got a extension lead hanging out the back of your van and someone walks by and trips over. So that part of the policy, $500 to $600, maybe a little bit more depending on the value of the drone. And then we're seeing rates of anywhere, and this is really depends on the value of the drone, is $1 per minute, and I've seen up to $50 a minute for the drone, really depending on the And we're talking significant kits there, like things that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, running lidars with $50 million liability limits and stuff. So there's all right. So it's not as straightforward as just saying there's one price fits all. It's there's a bit of a variation. There's a bit of underwriting to do.
And then it's all done on the fly then. So when I say I'm flying my LiDAR under me, whatever, or I'm flying a point and shoot, and it just quickly does it.
This is the distinctive difference between pay-as-you-go and pay-how-you-go. Pay-as-you-go is all negotiated up front at the start of the insurance contract. So you'll know your rate per minute at the very start of the annual period. Pay-how-you-go is dynamic pricing, and that's where we're going. So pay-how-you-go will be variable contracts, variable pricing based on where, location, but on top of that, all the other, who you are as an individual and how that contributes to the risk. So there's a lot of different variables associated with the pay-how-you-go stuff.
So you're in Australia at the minute, and you're expanding into America.
Yeah. So within the next 6 months, we'll be I hope a couple of my competitors are on here watching this. We'll be in the UK, we'll be in Asia, and we'll be in the USA. So the Australian stuff has obviously been advantageous because of my background. But we're going to be hopefully kicking off our first policy in February next year in the US, and then Asia could start next week, or it could start in the new year, and then in the UK that's on the horizon, very immediate horizon. So we're pursuing all. Basically, we're going to be global by the end of next year. That's the anticipation. Well, we haven't done a lot of marketing, but that's basically because we've been trying to get our to a point where it's suitable for insurers, which is, they do have a very high standard.
Okay, well, hurry up and get across to Africa as well. We'll have a look at that. I see people on forums begging for it all the time, and I see sort of, shall we say, general insurers jumping in. I went to a conference where there were 3 lots of insurers, and not one of them had a clue about RPAS, but yet they were selling RPAS insurance, and I'm sure it won't be fit for purpose. Maybe talking about I'm pretty sure that it won't be.
You piqued my interest, so I'll have to take that offline and see what I can do.
Yeah, it's a very small market. It's a tiny market here. Anyway, please stay with us, and let's talk now to Christian. And Christian, who's got a little bit of that insurance jigsaw, I suppose, and a little bit of many parts of many jigsaws, in that you are the maker of ADS-B equipment, and you are part of the very recently successul, I forgot what it's called.
Operation Zenith.
Zenith, that's it. Operation Zenith in Manchester.
Right.
And you had UTMB. What on earth is UTMB?
Yeah, so it's a made-up term. We described, we made it up, but we wanted to decide, we wanted to, name the terminology of the technology that we were providing to Zenith. So just to, I assume your audience knows a little bit about Zenith, because I know you had Richard Parker on a couple weeks ago. But Zenith was an operation demonstration that occurred in the UK at Manchester Airport, where we integrated manned and unmanned aircraft operations on and off the airport. There were helicopters, commercial aircraft proceeding as normal at the airport, while simultaneous runway inspections were being conducted by drone, package delivery on the airport by drone, and nearby commercial operations and even some non-commercial spoofed rogue drones were occurring. And the component that we brought to the solution, so the operation was sort of led and hosted by Altitude Angel and NATS jointly, and we had an infrastructure component to it. UTMB stands for UTM Broadcast, and so what we were doing was, while there were some drones that were operating as part of the demonstration that were equipped with ADS-B, most of them were not. And so there were some non-cooperative sensors being used in the region. There was a non-cooperative radar by Dedrone. There was an DJI Aeroscope system integrated, and others were just using the Altitude Angels Guardian application, saying, I'm flying here at this location. Through all of those sources for non-cooperative data, those drone positions were provided to UAVionics, and we broadcast to those as ADS-B targets from a ground station at Manchester Airport, so that manned aircraft in the region could visualize these drone operations on their moving map displays, on their iPads, on their phones, or on their cockpit avionics. And so that's what we termed UTMB, UTM Broadcast. It has some advantages in that it's a pretty low-cost system, but the biggest advantage is in spectrum savings and cost savings to operators, whereas operators don't need to equip with ADS-B directly, but if they're cooperating through the system, the ground-based network takes care of the spectrum utilization in an efficient manner, such that it broadcasts only when there needs to be a broadcast, rather than just putting a target on somebody's display for them.
So you wouldn't just help me understand that a little bit. What are you saying? Yeah. You're not just rebroadcasting everything. If an aircraft is in the northwest quadrant of our area of interest, and there's a drone in that area, would you then transmit that relative data relative to him, and then not anything else? I'm not putting that very well. Would it? Yeah, no, you have a go.
Yeah, so in the United States, the system is called TISB, Traffic Information System Broadcast. And the way the TISB system works is if a non-ADS-B aircraft is operating within a 17-mile radius and a couple hundred feet plus or minus of altitude of an aircraft that is operating with ADS-B, then the ground-based system detects the situation that there are two aircraft in proximity and one of them cannot see the other, and takes care of that by broadcasting the target up into the air. And so we basically mimicked that component. If there's a drone in the proximity of a manned aircraft, and through whatever algorithmic means we determine, we think that manned aircraft should know about it, then we bring the target up there. If the drone's operating behind him, it doesn't seem like efficient use of spectrum. Or thousands of feet below them, it doesn't, it's not going to make much of a difference if we broadcast that target or not. So we try to, those algorithms are sort of yet to be refined, but we can use some simple logic right now to say, there's a couple of aircraft within vicinity of each other, and they should know about it.
So again, help me here. Is this a good way to because if every drone were to buy one of your ping units, we'd quickly quickly get very noisy. I know you change power outputs and things like that, depending on where stuff is. But is this perhaps where drones should fit into the ADS-B picture, is through rebroadcast rather than their own units? I don't know, to be honest with you. I think this seems like a good solution near airports where aircraft are at low altitudes, right? So if you've got something like this rebroadcast solution within a vicinity of larger airports, or who knows what size airports, but near airports where you've got aircraft climbing and descending, but at low altitudes, may run into conflict. I don't think I would advertise that you want a rebroadcast system at low altitudes nationwide, whatever nation that might be. Full ubiquitous coverage seems like overkill at the moment, but if you're integrating into Class Bravo airspace or something like that, it might be a solution for you. And I see the for 2020 is coming up very quickly. It seems we've been talking for a couple of years, and it was far away, not relatively far away, but now it's getting ever closer. The FAA have kept going the rebate scheme, I think, for manned aircraft, money back guarantees or whatever it is.
I sure have. Yeah, I was actually earlier today, I was at an industry group called Equip 2020, where manufacturers and industry groups and the FAA all come together and report on the status of everything ADS-B in order to communicate. The FAA rebate was launched about 2 months ago. I think it was October 12th. There's about 10,000, about $9,700 worth of rebates in the money pot, and those rebates will continue at $500 a pop. Those rebates will continue until we run out of money from the FAA. And I believe the number I heard was out of that 9,700, there's been about 1,200 reserved so far.
Okay.
1,200 of them in 200. Yeah.
So it's making a difference, is it that, do you think? Because before we've spoken and you didn't think that the take-up rate was too rapid.
It's still pretty slow. So, the estimates that I saw today were still only about 30% of general aviation are equipped that they think should be equipped. So there's 1 year to go from that perspective. $500 rebate helps. It helps us in our timing of our certification of our SkyBeacon product. So lots of folks have, ordered our product and registered for the rebate, and it's all sorts of, everything's a bureaucracy. So you have to help everyone through the process. But we've seen quite a lot of interest just in those past 2 months.
And is that the one that fits onto the nav light on the wing? Is that the Sky?
It is. Yeah, it's a wingtip replacement for a nav light / strobe light. Installation has about 15 minutes of installation time.
It pulls the power from the light, obviously, and the antenna hangs below it, doesn't it? So now, what about in our world? What have you changed your product lineup in the RPAS world?
We have not launched it yet, but we've got a new Mode S transponder in work that we are moving. Now that we've caught the TSO certification bug and we know how to do that, we're working on a Mode S transponder certification that we're hoping to announce by AUVSI of next year. It's quite impressive and small. It's probably about 2 inch by 2 inch square by about 1/2 inch in depth. So it's.
But why would we? I'm sorry, Christian. Why would we go Mode S? Why don't we want the full Monty of GPS equipped ADS-B?
Yeah, sorry, I just used your shorthand there. So that's Mode S extended squitter. So that would be Mode S plus ADS-B with the GPS in it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
right.
the full. It's the full product line. Yeah, and we're really targeting the manufacturers that are working towards type certification. Those guys are looking for anything certified that they could put on their aircraft because it just helps them check a box and move on to whatever the next problem is for them. So we're going to have a certified GPS and a certified transponder ADS-B transponder as well. Hopefully, in just a few months. Quite big focus for us right now.
I was in Tanzania recently at the Lake Victoria Challenge, and every airframe was fitted with one of your devices, and I can see that being just a base standard over there. I can't see anybody flying without them. So you'll have 6 sales there next year, sure.
Right.
Very sure.
There we go.
Yeah, it just for the regulators that were there. It just made them feel a lot safer. It was just quite simple. They just
it was safer. Part of the overall safety case of the exercise in general.
Yeah, and it just it just to help them. Sound rude. Whether it really made it safer or not, I don't know. But it made them feel safer, and so that works. Does anyone else have any questions for Christian whilst we're here? Shaking of heads. Another rude question as ever from me. Any? Can you give us a rough number of units you've sold into the drone world? Rough number, to the nearest one. No.
I would say It's hard to answer because here's the scale of the equipment. There's on one end of our equipment we sell, call it the expensive products, the Mode S transponders that are ADS-B enabled, and we've sold those in the probably about 1,000 of those, right, in general. On the other scale of product, we sell chipsets that ADS-B receivers that get sold into OEM products. Hundreds of thousands of those, right? And but the pricing is vastly different, volumes different, products vastly different. But so from a quantity standpoint, I can use the higher number and say hundreds of thousands of products have been shipped.
Tough answer. Tough answer. I like that. Very good indeed. I see you've got on your website, you've got a super duper receiver with weather and all sorts of things. I can't remember what you call it now. I never have a look. What's that new receiver about?
Are you talking about Ping Station? Is that what you're talking about?
Could be. Yeah, it could be. It could be. There was something there. I should have had it up in front of me, but I haven't. Never mind.
Yeah, that's not super new. It's just a weatherproof ADS-B receiver that provides really long range reception. It's networkable, power over Ethernet capable. We've got they've been very popular for over a year now. We've been selling these products, and they go to airports. They go to UAS test sites. They go to on top of command and control stations for UAS RPAS operators. Really have found quite a lot of uses for those.
Do you pull back in multilaterated Mode S in any way with that?
We do not.
Is that up to us as the end user to do that? Okay.
That's up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, well, thank you very much. Well done, and well done on being
welcome.
part of Zenith. That was fantastic, and thank you for joining us. It's coming to that sort of time of this broadcast, coming out to the top of the hour. When I ask, has anybody else seen anything else this week that caught their eye?
Yes, I did.
Did you now?
I actually sent a link of that video. At a surf competition in Hawaii, a Mavic drone was hovering over the area, and they called in a helicopter to get rid of it. And the helicopter flew over the drone and over the people and blew the drone into the water, narrowly missing the people that were on jet skis there, which raises all sorts of issues. As I understand it, unmanned aerial vehicles, or RPAS, are considered to be an aircraft under FAA regulations. And if you deliberately knock an aircraft from the sky, that's got to be a breach of FAA regulations. You've also got the issue that the event organisers are claiming it was unsafe for this 1 kilogram Mavic to be hovering over the crowd of people, yet they flew a 1-ton Hughes 500 over the crowd and knocked this drone into the water where the people were. It's kind of what's going on here. It's all about, copyright and intellectual property rights and things. They didn't want this event being filmed by someone who wasn't licensed to do so, but they committed an act of endangerment, egregious act of endangerment. And it also raises this whole thing, we're told that if you see a drone from a helicopter, lives have been put at risk. Now, here's a helicopter's come into the area where a drone's operating and deliberately knocked it out of the sky. So surely the pilot is guilty of endangerment. And it's not the first time it's happened. I seem to recall a national park somewhere in America, someone was flying a drone over a river and a police helicopter came and tried to knock it out of the sky. We've got two stories going here. One says this is all way too dangerous. The other says, oh, it's okay because we're going to knock the drone out of the sky. I'd really like someone to ask the people involved some really serious questions. Otherwise, it makes a mockery of all the safety claims that are being made for the operating these two vehicles in the same piece of airspace. It's lunacy.
Well, I wonder what would happen if I went to my insurer and said a helicopter just knocked my drone out the sky.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have been too impressed. That's for sure. I would have been pretty upset with the helicopter pilot. But I'm not 100% across the FAA regulations, but I do know that in Australia there could be, if you're taking hostile takeover of an aircraft, irrespective if you're on board or off board, is potentially some terrorism involved in that. So there's all sorts of. I don't like the sound of this at all. And the scariest thing about it is that there's clearly a need for the maturity of this anti-drone technology rapidly, even if it means you need to put it up around a surf event to protect, very expensive surfers out there in the beach, or to protect people in a populated area. The technology is just not. Well, it doesn't feel like it's just being commercialized correctly just yet. So Yeah, from an insurance standpoint, yeah, well, 100% that would be the helicopter would be paying for that drone, because if he's gone and maliciously destroyed it, then he needs to fix the issue and any liability associated with it.
Well, that would be the next thing. It was very interesting. There was this CAA chat, UK CAA, last week at a show, and they were talking about anti-drone technology, and they were very much saying, well, you know, we're not sure we're all for it, because who does have a right to shoot down a drone? Where is it going to go if something does go down? And so the Civil Aviation Authority in the UK is quite nervous about that idea, and the unintended consequence of shooting, if you're GPS jamming, for instance, which I'm not sure. Can anyone legally GPS jam, I wonder? If you fire that towards a thing, imagine all the aircraft behind it for the next 100 miles that have also been jammed. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure the answer to that. And Christian, maybe this actually comes into your court a little bit, that we've got a situation here in Australia where you've got large events that are using drones as a part of their camera work. But now you don't know which drones are a part of the camera crew and which ones aren't. So there's a situation where you do need to have that identification, active identification. And then basically what you could do in that situation is say, all right, well, you know, we only said we had 4 drones in the stadium. We've got 5. So with the identification, all those ones that are identified land, and then, that one's still not landed. So we have to get that one out of the sky or get it out of the stadium somehow. Hence the reason why anti-drone needs to be available. Or more simply, you just put a big ring up around the stadium and only those ones that have been approved using technology like what you've got, Christian, can actually go inside the ring, and then it just won't allow anyone in.
Yeah. It's, don't worry, because there's only 50 different standards being developed for remote identification. So that'll solve the problem.
We'll be there so after Christmas, all good?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I mean, it's a whole standards thing. It is a problem, isn't it? As we've explained spoken about many times before. So I suppose you could argue that ADSB at least is a standard that's very well known and that's adopted, but that's not what they want, is it? They want the ability to identify the operation and all that sort of thing, and that's what registration is all about. And Bruce is all for registration, as we know.
Oi. How dare you say that?
Just seeing if you're still awake.
The key for registration is me being able to hold the owner of the drone accountable. So even if you get it stolen, you still need to report it stolen, and that just doesn't happen these days. And so, let's say that I do. Yep.
Do you really think that people who are going to commit nefarious acts are going to register in the first place, though?
No, but but then at least you know, so if we go back through the product lines, if I buy a Phantom 4 from JB Hi-Fi, here in Australia, then the owner should be on JB Hi-Fi, because they need to be registering at the point of service or the point of sale, and that would be an ideal scenario, because then I'm buying a Mavic 2. All you need here, before you take control of it, we have to register it now, and we register it and it goes off. That way you can get as many people into the system as you can. And even if it changed multiple hands, you just need to have a single point of contact to hold someone accountable. Otherwise, it's just the wild, wild west, which is what we're kind of living in at the moment. Just thankfully, we haven't seen anything catastrophic yet.
But Jimmy, they exactly tried to do that in America, and the big retailers jumped onto that was one of the preferred options, was registration at point of sale, rather than the $5 massive education campaign that occurred in the end. But the retailers that got on the committee just shouted that down and wouldn't have it, and were too powerful a voice. So I'm sure JB, whoever it is, would probably end up being the same down there. Was it Dick Smith, whatever he's called? He'd be there.
He's gone.
Is he?
He's gone.
He's gone.
Log on. Yeah.
But I'd liken this to the firearm situation, where criminals with guns, they don't buy them, they steal them. So if you're going to do something nefarious with a drone, you won't buy it, you'll steal it, and then the registration system doesn't work then.
But I suppose the argument is, if you've registered some friendlies, as it were, anyone that isn't on the friendly list that's within your stadium is plainly an unfriendly and needs to be dealt with in whatever way. But then the big question is, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? You can't just shoot it
How
down.
do you know that drone's not registered? I mean, you need electronic conspicuity then, so you need an electronic register and you need a beacon, and it gets really complicated. And what we have to look at is, okay, we're trying to solve a problem that as yet doesn't exist. How many people have been killed by recreational multi-rotor drones again? Is it really worth this huge investment? It's not like a firearm, it's not like a motor vehicle. The threat, the risk is extremely low, despite what the media tells us.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with Bruce on that point. You know, the reality is that not a lot of people have been killed by it, but the biggest concern is with this growth that eventually someone will get killed, and if you haven't got the infrastructure in place, then it's just going to go out of control. But you know,
people are being killed every day, falling down stairs and falling off bicycles and things. We don't register those. You know, you've got to manage risk. At some point, you say the risk is so low that it is not worth this expenditure. We're better to spend that money, time, and effort on something that is a more bigger risk. Then, therefore, we're going to save lives. We're dealing with a problem that doesn't exist. It's just a feel-good thing. It's just so that people can tick boxes and say, look, we're doing this, you know. But it's not actually saving lives.
Oh, the key for me is around accountability. I don't think you need to have any electronic identification or anything. It's just about being able to hold someone accountable for an event, and that just can't happen. Like Bruce, even if you were to crash and hurt somebody today, you could just run away, and then no one can figure out that it was you. There's no way to prove it was you that was actually flying. And even if they could prove, oh well, you know, you registered that serial number with DJI, you could just say no, I didn't, and they can't prove it. They would have to tell DJI to hand over their records, and then straight away DJI is like, well, this could be a manufacturing fault, so no, I'm not giving you the records.
Yeah, but the thing is, if people were being killed by recreational drones, I'd agree with you, but they're not.
Exactly.
And it may happen eventually, but also more people have been injured, seriously injured, by falling meteors than by recreational multi-rotor drones. As when Chelyabinsk happened over in Russia, people were hospitalized. How many people have been hospitalized through recreational drone use?
Well, can we?
Yes, I disagree.
Well, we do. NASA doesn't NASA do the remote identification of falling meteorites? Isn't that their job? Surely it's their job. Gosh, I never. And so it's also there are more coconut-related deaths per annum than shark deaths. You know, we don't regulate coconuts, do we? It's and they're on the land. It's hard to see a shark. It's much easier to see a coconut. But anyway,
well, we do have to be sensible. These things are man-built. You know, they're mobile assets. They can be used in a malicious way. Like I suppose you could rip off a coconut and throw it at someone. But you know, I think the importance where we were heading with that is that there's a huge gap in the ability to manage drones, and this is where just having a helicopter knock another aircraft out of the sky, irrespective if it's a drone or another aircraft, is just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it can't be right on a whole host of reasons, can it? It's just a whole host of levels and reasons, and who's to know that the guy was outside of their shall we say exclusion zone or whatever they might have thought that they had, and did they promulgate one? Was there a NOTAM? Was it officially, or is it just their idea that that they had a right to that bit of sky? I flew many years ago. I flew an airship. Well, I had to try and do some guerrilla marketing around a Formula One race. And they actually have, from all the camera angles, they've worked out the bits of sky that the camera is going to see in the distance, and they NOTAM out beyond in all the up angles and everything. It's really hard to try and guerrilla market around a Formula One race and stay legal. It's very hard. So they cleverly think about all that. I wonder if these surf guys have, you know. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story for another day. Another pub story. I noticed we're going to jump to Nicola that you put some fantastic pictures up of the top of a hill. So did you get a very big ladder? Did you get a very big ladder?
Yeah.
And
yeah. You got that right.
Is that how you did it? It must have been, because obviously to fly that sort of, or were you passing by in an airliner perchance?
Actually, in all honesty, I was about right at the top there, about probably less than 100 meters over the terrain. So really, and on my way down, that sort of persisted up to a point. So really, I was moving within sort of regulation, one would say. And
apart from being able to see it. apart from it being like 20 kilometers.
You know the deal with us. It's still line of sight.
Yes.
Even at 10 kilometers, that's still line of sight.
Well, we all wish we could live there. And is that a weather radar on top of the mountain?
Yeah, the white, the mushroom type of building. I'm not sure what exactly that is, and if it's operational. It was some military thing at some point, but the white thing is the airport radar, and that thing is actually what's making flying at 1.2 gigahertz over there pretty difficult, because one of the frequencies it operates on is that one, and really nasty. But the crosswind flew with the new lithium-ion battery that day, and some Tarot gimbal with a Firefly 8S on it, and honestly, outstanding. I mean, outstanding. Both the battery and the gimbal, which is a surprise. Probably not a surprise for the battery. Definitely a big surprise for the gimbal.
And what were you doing per kilometer?
No idea. Really didn't pay attention to that. I was really taken by the whole RSSI and awesome view thing to really keep an eye on that. And I still don't have my current meter calibrated, but I need to take a look at the DVR and I'll be able to estimate something from those readings, because roughly I multiply by 2 point something and I get a roughly accurate amp drop. But I can tell you this: I flew for over 1.5 hours, or about 1.5 hours, and the battery was still not drained. And it will do with these wooden props and these high kV motors. It will certainly do 2 hours with that battery, and that includes, climbing almost 2 kilometers up to that mountaintop. Although granted, on the way back I just throttled down and it was gliding all the way down. This plane is absolutely stunning. So I know that
you didn't do your normal put the nose down, try and rip the tail off routine.
I didn't, and I didn't. I tried to do it, but I'll tell you why I didn't. Because with the crosswind, there's this issue with the tail incidence. It's a few degrees up, so it's pushing the plane down at all times, and Pixhawk is usually correcting that pretty successfully up to a point. You get over 70, 80 kilometers an hour, and it starts going like this. And the more the speed increases, because I'm still running the default PID, so it really, at some point, it just can't compensate for that. And as the speed increases, it just gets worse. So I couldn't really dive, but I could stop the motors and just let it sort of glide or parachute or whatever, because I know it doesn't stall, and when it does, the nose just drops a little bit. It picks up speed and it keeps going. And it was a perfect day, no wind, no nothing, and it was just awesome. Awesome. And I made it across half the town to a power plant, because the smoke coming from the chimneys was going just straight vertical. Very nice. I mean, it's in one of the shots. Made a few passes around there, and then landed, because at that point I was already bored, and my back was sore from sitting for over 90 minutes, hunched over the monitor, flying this thing. But lithium-ion.
The photos are on your, and I've put the link in the comments, are on your Facebook page. And is the video up yet on your channel?
No, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Should be. I'm hoping to be able to publish it tomorrow. Thing is, though, it will probably do 2 hours with that lithium-ion battery. Maybe might do a bit more depending on conditions. But I'm thinking once I replace those motors and go for better props than those wooden ones, which are definitely not as efficient as they can be. I really don't know, but I'm hoping 3 hours at least.
Well, we were
Possibly
hoping for
more. And
we were hoping for
and
six, weren't we?
the plane can definitely take at least another one of these batteries. If I don't
Okay.
add any mapping cameras, if we're looking at pure FPV, the gear it has on it right now, plus another one of these batteries, might make takeoffs just a tad bit heavier, like might dip. Rather than dipping 5 centimeters on takeoff before pulling up, it might dip 10.
Okay. Oh,
You know.
that's all good. That's all.
Yeah,
good.
but then you get double the capacity. I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
40,000 milliamp hours on 6S, and I'm pretty sure that can probably, with the right motors and props, that might get it to 5-6 hours.
I will. Well, that's.
I will try that. I will try that. Need to get some props, and I do have some of those 510 kV motors on the regular Nimbus. I will move them over to this one at some point, but I need to get some of these 12x12 E props from APC, and I think it will be interesting.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now, I wonder, is Louis actually there, or is Louis just because he's got a cold? I'm gonna think that he probably isn't there. And so,
Everybody else seems frozen for some reason.
oh, it's just that time of year, and Bruce is the king of mime and being still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. He's in a box. He's in a box.
Yeah.
So also, yes. Not only.
I also flew the new Zocht plane, the Dart XL, that same day.
Is that the one with the looks flippin' ugly?
No, it's friggin' beautiful. The one with the
big black nose.
with the forward swept wings.
Yeah, with the big squared off nose. Horrible looking thing.
Yeah, well, that's debatable. I think it looks absolutely outstanding. But I did a live cast on Facebook for the maiden flight, and I really didn't know what to expect. But that thing just took off absolutely perfectly. It was amazing. It was just amazing. It's like it's on rails. I don't know, when I get to the review, see what I'm talking about. It's just outstanding. And I even managed to crash it while doing low passes so I can get some side shots of the thing. I ran it straight into a bush, and trying to get out of it, I throttled up, and it went through the bush, like the top of it, and it just sort of like it detached the prop because the nut was actually in the direction the prop was unscrewing. So it actually unscrewed the nut, the prop fell off, and the plane just went like this, like a frisbee, and just landed in the snow, no damage whatsoever. Amazing.
Well, I look forward to seeing a video of that. And on that bombshell, our insurance at Bruce's dodgy flying company has just gone through the roof with a lot of us. You see what you've just gone and done there? You've just, I don't know how Bruce is going to survive. I just don't know how he's going to survive.
He will.
He will. I'm sure he will. So look, with that, I think I am going to call an end to proceedings this evening. Thank you very, very much, Christian, from UAVionics, for joining us. Well done on everything you're doing, and it's exciting to hear all these projects are being able to kick off around the world, and with your products as key parts of it. And they are. They're enabling stuff to happen. So that's very cool. It's very cool indeed. And I thought we'd rip Simon apart. We didn't seem to do that. We seemed to agree with him. And Well, there we are. No, insurance, yeah, it's a thorny subject, isn't it? But something that's needed, and yeah, can make a big difference to your business and keep you in business. If something dreadful happens and you've got the right cover, then at least you may not go out of business. So thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you can join us again when you have something new to share. And with that, I'll say thank you very much, dear viewers. Thank you very much, gentlemen. See you again, 2100 GMT next week. Cheerio. Safe weekend.
Bye-bye.
Safe weekend, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, Louis. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.